know, what will you do? And again, Emily Levy, leader in the election securities movement since 2004. I can vouch for that. I was there when she was working very hard on the Ohio situation. So a long time champion, and again, runs powertomakeadifference.com, powertomakeadifference.com, and she's going to tell us what maybe we should do now that we know.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Jim and Rich and the whole NVRTF team for putting this conference together. I know you did a tremendous amount of work on it. I appreciate it. I know a lot of people here appreciate it, and those who will see the videos that are being made of today who are watching on social media too. So thank you for this work. I, like Bob said, I've been around for a while doing this work, starting actually as an election protection volunteer with the Election Protection Coalition, which I learned today. The idea was at Barbara Armwine's kitchen table that they have, or say it again?
It was in my office.
Or in your office. That has become what might be more familiar to those of you who may not have been working on election security for so long. You may know it as 1-866-OUR-VOTE. That hotline, that national hotline, began as the Election Protection Coalition. And I went down to Albuquerque and worked in their statewide office around the 2004 election, and felt like we just saw the election get stolen right out from under us, and that was the beginning of opening my eyes about what was going on with our election systems. And since then I've worked with, consulted with, or volunteered with about a half a dozen different groups around the country. I've worked on projects in New York State, in Arizona, in Florida, in Nevada, Wisconsin, California, a little bit, even though this is where I live, and a little bit in other places too, and I may be forgetting some. And, but I actually have been an activist a lot longer than that. I realized earlier this year when I was in Vancouver speaking that I have been an activist for over 50 years, starting when I was 8 years old, and organized an effort for girls to be allowed to wear pants to school. So I've learned a few things, and I want to share some with you. And I know I mentioned yesterday that the title of this talk sounds like it's for people who aren't active yet, and that most of you who are in this room are already really active. And so I'm actually going to try to talk to both audiences, the people who are already active and working hard on this stuff and have been for a while, or are newly working on it, and also people who are interested and not yet working for secure and transparent elections. So first, to those of you who've been working on this for a long time, I know how much you care about this, and I know how exhausted you are. And I also know how painful it is to have been working on this issue and be called a conspiracy theorist, and be not listened to, and nobody wants to hear that stuff, and oh, it's too complicated, we couldn't possibly pay attention. And oh, that doesn't matter, we know why Trump really won, or we know why whatever it is that happened, and all of the assumptions that are made. And this is a piece of the cost of having an election system we can't trust that we don't talk about very much. One of the costs of it is that we, as a country, believe things about our nation that aren't true, because we believe things about public opinion as it's measured by elections we can't trust. So when people say, oh, people in the United States think this, or people in this city or this state think this because of who got elected, that is not necessarily a fair conclusion. Anyway, that was a little bit of a side note. So I know how painful it is to do this work for a really long time and be underappreciated, usually unpaid. And I have to say, Garland, when you said I've been doing this as a volunteer for all these years, I couldn't figure out whether to applaud, because I honor you, and I also want you to get paid.
Right. Yeah.
And the same goes for everyone here. We're doing immensely valuable work. So, here's something I want to share. Things are really different now, and since the 2016 election, a lot more people, millions and millions more people, believe the stuff that we have been saying for years and years. And I think we're all carrying around so much hurt about not being believed that we haven't stopped to notice how different the landscape is. With more publicity, there could have been 5,000 people here this weekend. There could have been, we have only had a very tiny audience on social media. We could have had a huge one if we believed that people cared. And it's time for us to start believing that, because it's really true now. So I want to ask you to just let that sink in and start acting as though people care, because they do. I see this giant mismatch. We know all these things. We've been talking all weekend about what we need to do, what kind of audits we need to have, and what kind of voting systems we need to have, and all of that kind of stuff. We know what there is to do, and it's hard to do it because we don't have enough people. And at the same time, there are millions of people who want to help, and they say, I want to do something, but I have no idea what to do. There's this giant mismatch between those two groups, and I'm here to talk to you about my plan for how to put those two groups together, so that the people who want to help and the people who need help can find each other. Okay? That's my current plan. And I think one of the things that happens, and one of the reasons it's hard for us to grow our organizations and bring more people in, is that it's hard to understand this stuff. There's a pretty steep learning curve to understand the kinds of things that we've been talking about this weekend. But here's the thing. Not everybody who's working on it needs to really understand it deeply. When I started working on this, after the election in 2004, I became the coordinator of Richard Hayes Phillips' investigation, precinct-level investigation into what turned out to be, suspected to be, and turned out to be the theft of the presidential election in Ohio. At the time, I knew almost nothing about elections. But what I knew is how to find people who had the skills we needed and put them together and get them communicating with each other to make a project happen. There are all kinds of skills, and so now I'm talking also to the people who want to help and don't know what to do. The skills you have are needed, even if you don't understand all this in-the-weeds stuff about elections. If you're a graphic artist, if you're a filmmaker, if you're an attorney, if you know how to do statistics, if you know how to work social media, there are so many skills that are needed, and your skills can be applied to this cause without you knowing every single thing about it. So I was watching a show, an Australian TV show recently, and there was a scene of an election. And the election was close, and they were trying to figure out what happened. Somebody said, what's going on with this election? And the reply was, we won't know until the scrutineers come. Scrutineers? What's that? So I looked it up, and it's actually a thing. It wasn't made up for this TV show. It's actually what election monitors and investigators are called in Britain and Australia, and maybe other places too. So, hi, scrutineers. What a great word. Soon, I'm intending, and I need some support to make this happen, but I'm intending to launch scrutineers.org. And what it's going to be is this. It's going to be an online community where people who want to help with election security and hopefully also voting rights, and that depends some on what kind of resources I'm able to bring together, because it's not my area of expertise so much. For people to come and learn the basic stuff that they need to know, to volunteer for the groups that are represented here this weekend and other election security groups in the nation, so that they can come volunteer for you and actually be an asset, not take up your time with the basic questions that everyone has to answer. So what does this kind of voting machine do? What's a BMD? Why don't you like it? What is certification, and when does that happen? And how do all these things that disenfranchise people fit in with election security? All that kind of stuff. And even after they learn that stuff, and they'll also learn what projects are going on, and maybe some of them will want to volunteer with Lulu's Count the Vote project, which you will hear about soon, and some of them will want to volunteer to do ballot image audits with AUDIT USA, and some of them will want to work with Dan's project, taking photos of poll tapes up in their neighborhoods and knowing what to do with those. And some of them will want to volunteer with Barbara's organization, and we're going to talk later so I know exactly what it is that you're going to need people to do. So in order to make this happen, I'm going to need a couple of kinds of support from those of you who are already involved. I'm going to need you to be clear with me about what you need so I can get you people. And I'm going to need your help with some of the technical stuff that's beyond my level of expertise or beyond my area of expertise. And I'm also currently looking for sponsors for this to fund it, to get it rolling. So the idea is that people will get basic training and find out what's needed in their area and what's needed before the election versus during the election versus after the election, decide what they want to do, and then they'll be able to come to you and volunteer, but they'll still be able to come back into this community to ask questions, hopefully decreasing the amount of time that you need to spend answering the volunteers' questions. So the platform that I'm using for this also has in it people can find folks that are near them through the platform. They can have threaded discussions, write articles, that kind of thing. And it also has private groups within it that are not Facebook. So it has the option of us perhaps finally stopping having these absurd, this is inside baseball stuff for those of you who are not leaders of election security organizations. We can stop communicating by these ridiculously long email threads that CC everybody, but we could actually have threaded conversations inside a group in this community. So I'm hoping to be offering that to all of you. So here's where it is now. Like the platform that I want to use will only take me a couple weeks to set up once I have the resources, so this can happen really quickly. Right now, scrutineers.org website does not exist. Will you put the slide up, Dale? But I did make a way for you to sign up to find out when this launches. So pull out your cell phones if you're interested in staying in touch with this project. And what I want you to do is text the word security to this phone number on the screen. Can you make it bigger at all? I don't care if the white space shows. So it's 773-770-4377. Text the word, so the word security is the contents of the text, and the phone number is where you send it to. And that will get you on the list for me to notify you when this is happening. So this is not only for the people in this room who are in organizations, but anybody who's within the sound of my voice, who is interested in volunteering to work on secure and transparent elections in the United States and wants to learn more about it and learn what they can do. I invite you to text the word security to 773-770-4377. And I will be calling many of you to ask you directly whether I can count on your support for this project so that I can support you in your work and get you some volunteers so that you can make a bigger difference. So I don't think that's my time, but I'm actually finished. Thank you. What?
You wouldn't have to answer questions.
I'm happy to answer questions. Can you answer a question?
Yeah, I got around the scrutineers concept. It's an amazing concept. I think me being a person that just came in, kind of the tail end of the work, what I see the most help that's needed is messaging, and kind of creating this large thing down to something that is streamlined and communicate the way that you can communicate. Now, I know I lean on you a lot. She's helped me write a bit. And also, Lulu, you guys are usually the messaging people. So would it be better for some of us who have these ideas that we're working on to then kind of partner with your organization, and then you come up with the messaging, and then now I know the best way to communicate this so that it's something that's digestible. I know when I first came to Florida, we went back and forth on this really complex concept, and you kind of gave me ways to talk about it, and it really helped my messaging. So if you could just elaborate on that.
Thank you, Vinny. So yes, I would love to do that. So part of my vision is that this online community will have within it short videos explaining different concepts that people can just look at when they need to. So they don't have to go through a whole training program. There will be a little live orientations when they come in, and probably a videotaped one for people who come in between the live ones and want to get started right away. And then there will be resources that they can access to learn the things that they need to know when they need to know them. They'll just be there for them to find. And one of the resources I really want to provide is interviews with many of you about what you do and explaining what you do. And I want to interview you so that if you say something that I think folks who are new to this aren't going to understand, I'm going to stop and ask you to explain it until I think it's clear. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
And you are definitely on the list for who I want in there having your work described to me. That's so important. Any other questions?